Welcome back to the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast. This is another, incredible interview for myself and my co-host to go through. Let's welcome the co-host first. He's back by popular, well, not by popular demand, but he's back.
Ah,
Anyway,
charming.
that is and Mr. Andy Burrows. How are you, my friend?
I'm good, my man. When you get the call to come and interview one of your childhood heroes, you drop everything that you're doing, and I literally have dropped everything I'm doing tonight. And the answer has always been yes. But Ads, I've always got time for you, mate. And anytime I get to come back on hitting the turnbuckle and talk wrestling, always a pleasure, mate. So yeah, here we are.
Here we are again, and we have got, we're going to have a split interview today. We're going to have, we have got probably the greatest tag team in a generation to come on. We're going to split it into two halves. There's going to be one half with Axe, and the second, or the first half, so we say, is with a man that's not only been Smash, he's been a few other names in wrestling as well, but it is Smash from Demolition. Barry, how are you?
I am doing incredible, and I love you guys. It's a great introduction with you guys and everything, and it's just great to talk to people in England, and I love it in England. And this is the closest thing to it is to be on the podcast here.
It is, and we appreciate you coming on as well as Bill when we interview Axe later on. But Barry, let's just quickly talk, like before we get into Demolition quickly. 2024 tag team wise in wrestling. Watching it obviously weekly that we do, it's gone through the last 2 decades, peaks and troughs. It's gone like this, then we've had it like it's gone up a bit further. It's never kind of reached the heights of when you guys were doing it. But what do you think of tag team wrestling in 2024?
Well, I don't watch a lot of wrestling. I'm pretty busy doing a lot of different things, but in the last year or so, I think the tag team wrestling's gotten way better than it was.
Yeah.
When we wrestled, it was, you know, 10, 12 of the best tag teams ever. And the territory was kind of made for tag teams, where now it's not. And it's kind of getting back into that. But, it was for us every night you worked with one of the best tag teams and you had fun and good matches every night. And when I watched wrestling, 3, 4 years ago, it seemed like the guys didn't even want to be together sometimes. They were just thrown together.
Yeah.
And now it's kind of getting to where the guys are having fun working with each other. They don't mind if somebody looks, not as good as the other guy. And 2 nights ago, I watched the ladies wrestling, and it was on NXT. It was a 6-man tag, and it was one of the best matches I've seen. I couldn't believe how good they were.
Mhm.
And what they did, I've never seen guys do. So, the tag wrestling is really starting to come on.
Yeah, it definitely is. Go on, Andy. Sorry.
No, you're good, mate. Barry, how do you watching things like the Vince McMahon documentary that's recently aired on Netflix? There was a big, they were talking about the way the wrestlers were looked after back in the day to the way that wrestlers are looked after now, whether that be with days off, whether that be the amount of days that they travel. What's the biggest difference that you've found from when you were wrestling to now? Because me and Adam are very fortunate. We've sat down and talked with some greats of the 80s and the 90s, and they always point out the fundamental differences is the traveling, is the wrestler's well-being. Is there something that you feel now that you would love to have been around wrestling now, or is there something that you might miss from the era that you were wrestling in that you think they could bring into the current product? Because it is a completely different world, right?
Yeah, it is. It wasn't just the WWF that traveled like that. When I was in Mid South, I was on the road forever. When I was in Crockett's territory, it's like, if you don't wrestle, you don't make money. And nowadays, they're under contract. They work 3, 4 days a week or whatever, and they're making 3, 4, 5 times more than we did. Um, the wrestling is every year evolves. When I first started wrestling, I used to watch the Crusher, the Bruiser, Vern Gagne, all that, and I always thought that when our generation came, we were so much better than them, you know. But then the next generation after us came, and they're thinking they're so much better than us. And it's just every everyone evolves, and I think the biggest thing is nowadays is they take care of the wrestlers a little bit more.
Hmm.
They still get hurt and everything, but you know we never even knew anything about concussions. We didn't, you didn't want to tell the promoter that you twisted your knee and tore the cartilage or, broke your hand or whatever, because if you didn't work, you didn't make any money. Nowadays, you tell them and they give you 6 months off with pay, you know. I mean, that's a huge difference. And, my whole career, it was nice being with Axe, because if I was hurt, I'd tell Bill, "Hey, Bill, my back's bad today. Can you work a little bit more today?" And then he'd cover for me.
Just,
The office
just
would need,
sorry,
yeah,
sorry,
the
Bill,
office
just
would need to
to
know.
cut you off. We've got Axe coming on now, so
Ah,
Oh,
so he's joining the podcast in mid flow. So didn't want to, I didn't try to not to cut you off too much, but the man himself is just logging
there's Axe.
the show. It's just as we're just trying to connect a little bit. As you were saying, Barry, sorry, you were saying about if you were injured and stuff, you were kind of scared to mention it to the promoter because, as you say, if you're not working, you don't get paid. So a lot of the time, you was asking your partner right there to sort of say, look, can you maybe take more of the bumps or do more of the work, right?
Yeah, yeah. And, it was great having, Bill as my partner, because, we kept that to ourselves. And, we'd tell Mr. Fuji, and we'd involve Fuji more. But if the office knew that you were hurt, then all of a sudden you might not be the champions anymore, and you might, be doing jobs for people, and you'd be gone. You never know back then. So we kind of kept the injuries to ourselves, and you'd work right through it. And that's how all the guys were.
Yeah, definitely. So, well, we have to welcome Bill to the show now. Bill, just let you know, you are on mute, by the way. You are on mute, so we can't hear you at the moment. But we would like to welcome you to the show anyway. You are not.
How's that?
There
How's
you
that?
go.
there he is.
Sorry, guys, I had a heck of a time with this thing. I
Don't
should
worry.
have got my grandson to help me.
That's all right.
Modern
It's
technology.
modern technology. It's an absolute killer. But Bill, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for coming on. And just to touch on what we were talking about with Barry, we were saying about various sort of similarities and unsimilarities from working back when you was in the 80s and 90s to working in 2024. And Barry was making a point of saying that, nowadays there's perhaps looking after wrestlers more if they're injured, or they've got the downside guarantees to their contracts, meaning if they are injured and that they can actually go home and rest up, whereas you guys are on the road maybe 300 days a year working all through that.
Oh yeah, you had to. I mean, if you were injured, I think Barry already mentioned that somebody's going to step in your spot, and you're going to lose that spot. So we were fortunate. We would cover for each other if we were really hurt too badly. And with a tag team, you can do that because the fans really aren't aware of, he's got a bad leg or a bad hip or whatever. So that was the one good thing. But as a single, you still got to fight through it. And that's, we feel years ago today, every time we get up.
I know that feeling. I know that.
One of the feuds that perhaps we didn't really get a lot of, we did kind of get it, but it is not anywhere as big as what it could have been. I mean, I look at it now and it's easier to sort of, hindsight's a wonderful thing, right? But I just see a feud that perhaps didn't really happen as well as it should, because it could have easily have main evented at WrestleMania, was with you guys and the Road Warriors and LOD. Bill, was there a kind of reason why it didn't sort of take off as much as it did back then between you guys?
Well, one thing that they did for sure, and Barry and I have talked about this a number of times, they rushed it too quickly. They could have held off on that match for a period of time and let the fans clamor for it and want for it, but they threw it together right away. And nothing against the Road Warriors; they're friends of ours, or were unfortunately friends of ours. But they were worried about how they appeared in the ring that night, whether they were strong enough for this. And Barry and I always worked towards the match. We wanted to have the best match possible. And they were afraid that if you did this or you did that, they might look weak. If Andre the Giant can sell, anybody can sell. And there just wasn't chemistry there. We had better matches, far better matches with the Powers of Pain, because they wanted to do the same thing. And unfortunately, I think Legion of Doom, or Road Warriors, are they originally named, were worried about how they looked first and how they were going to come out at the end. And we weren't like that. And Barry knows that. He was close friends with them before I knew him. But I met both of them when they first started wrestling, when they were very, very green and very inexperienced. Loved the guys. We both did. but the chemistry wasn't there for the matches.
Yeah, and one of the hardest things was, they were in the South, and in the NWA, and they were over big time, and they built us up into the WWF big time, and the fans were two separate fans. So when they came in, they thought that they were going to still be the biggest thing ever, but they really weren't. And they just changed us baby faces. So when they came in, all the people weren't cheering them like they thought they were going to be. And then Vince tried to make us heels right away to get them over, and it just clashed. And like Bill was saying, they did it so fast they didn't build it. And the fans in the WWF, they were smart that you just don't come in and take over their territory. You got to work for it. So they should have been wrestling for a year before they even got to us, and then that would have been a great angle.
Definitely. Andy, go ahead.
Bill, Barry, one of the questions I know you might have been asked this already with what's gone on recently, with Vince McMahon no longer being involved in the WWE. Well, we guess he's not. Will we ever see the Demolition now go into the Hall of Fame? Because fans speak about it yearly. We've spoke about it, many wrestling fans, and the saying "never say never" in the WWE. With now Paul Levesque running WWE pretty much, and obviously Paul Heyman have a bigger say. We all know the reasoning behind why you guys haven't gone into the Hall of Fame yet, and it's an absolute travesty in my opinion. With the way things are now, potentially could we see you guys go into the Hall of Fame in your opinions?
Well, we never had an objection to going in. We just don't. There was a lot of politics involved, and now it's changed, like you say, and hopefully the change for the better is with our relationship. But we've never been in contact with anybody from the office, and like you said before, the only person that made the decision for anything before was Vince, and we weren't on Vince's like list, I guess. But we've never objected to being inducted. We've never objected to being included anything with WWE. So quite possibly could happen. But one thing we haven't done, we haven't lost any sleep over it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, last year at WrestleMania time, right before WrestleMania, they called us and they invited us to WrestleMania, and they invited us to the Hall of Fame. And that was a big change with, like you were saying, with Triple H in there. And I'm sure that's all his idea. We had to, unfortunately turn him down because the person who brought us in, he paid for us to come in, and we were busy doing stuff with him. So it wasn't like we could just leave and jump ship and go over there. And I'm hoping they understood it, and they should have. But that was the first kind of, hey, you guys want to come and be with us. So that was a good sign.
Hopefully, I mean, as Andy pointed out, I can't think that there can't be a Hall of Fame without one of the greatest tag teams in wrestling not being in it. It's a trouble. There's a lot of names you could throw out there that are not in it that should be in it, but I mean, you guys, without a doubt. But it's good to know that you guys are the doors open if they want to call you guys again and get you in. I think it's got to happen at some point as well. But talking about Bill, just quickly, we were speaking a bit to Barry, and I know Barry said he doesn't watch a lot of wrestling at the moment. I look at a team a bit like FTR, so they're in AEW at the minute, and I think they are the closest to I score an old school tag team. When I watch tag team wrestling, I remember you cut the ring off in half. You don't allow that person over near the corner because you don't want him making that hot tag to his teammate. You want to work on him and stuff like that. And FTR, I think, were one of the teams that just do that, well, pretty much as good as anybody in this era of wrestling. Do you think they would have worked well back in the 80s and 90s? Because I always think they're kind of a couple of generations too late, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah. And it was nice. We met them when we were in Manchester for a signing for, was I think last year or the year before.
Oh, Manchester, England.
Yes.
Yeah.
For the love of wrestling.
For the love of wrestling.
Yeah.
Right. And they were there. We met them. When we landed, they were at the airport, and we had heard about him. And a couple of our friends had said that they took their name and their inspiration from us. Of course, so we thanked them for that. But yeah, they would do well at that time frame too. I mean, like you say, they're old school. They're not flip flopping all over the place, and there's a little more psychology involved in their matches. But two real good guys.
Yeah.
But one of the things we mentioned earlier as well to Barry is like some of the biggest changes in wrestling. What do you think? Obviously, we're now with WWE networks, and the coverage of wrestling is so different now. But the fundamentals of the business, in your opinion, what's the biggest difference between now and when you guys were lacing them up?
Well, it's funny because somebody commented, they sent me a text and a little video last night about a match that was on, and I didn't even pay attention to what company. And I watched, it was a 3-minute video that they sent me. Those guys didn't stop taking bumps for 3 minutes, and it was choreographed so much that it looked, and in the comments, there was like 150 comments left underneath. It might as well have been just gymnastics. They were doing spots to do spots to do spots to outdo spots to do more spots, and ended up with what they said was a comedy finish where they're standing looking at each other like the last 3 minutes didn't mean nothing. There's no. They're trying to show to the audience that's in the locker room. Look at all what things we can do. There wasn't one hold in 3 minutes. You'd have got killed before that years ago. If somebody didn't grab a hold, you'd be in a hold, right, Barry?
Exactly.
Interesting.
It was just ridiculous.
That is that. I
And
think
every comment that was listed was, "This is not wrestling. This is gymnastics." And they were great gymnasts.
Yeah.
But they weren't wrestlers.
No. I think I know the match in question, but I won't say it while we're here. I think I know what match it is. May have been one happened quite recently. Barry, you've portrayed many characters, and the one that always brings a smile to my face when I even thinking about it now was Repo Man. It was just a really funny character that I really liked. I really enjoyed watching it back in the day. How difficult was the transition though from Smash, someone that used to come out, used to have your mask over your face, the face paint, and kind of like the seriousness side, because Demolition were always a serious team, to like let's say a jovial type thief in a lot of ways, but the differences in character was night and day. How difficult was the change from Smash to Repo Man?
It was pretty difficult because I wrestled at 310, 320 pounds all the time. And then I went down to 255, 260 pounds. And it was a whole different mindset of changing directions, but it was a lot of fun doing it. And, I got to work with all the top workers. I mean, I worked with Savage and Duggan and, DiBiase, The Undertaker, all the top guys. But I knew ahead of time that it wasn't going to be, a main event where I was going to be winning all the time. I'd be getting these guys over, and I didn't mind doing it because at the end I was going to end up turning babyface. And then, my main thing was I figured I was going to retire then and then do Make-A-Wish stuff and all that, but it never ended up to that point. And then that's when I left after a couple of years of it. But a lot of fun doing the gimmick, and I made some good money.
Boys, one question that we always ask people as well when they come on the show: stories from the road, some that you can maybe tell us on air. What's some of the funniest stories that you could potentially tell us that's happened out on the road with you guys? Because I'm sure the difference traveling back on the road when you guys were around to now is complete night and day. I mean, if I could ever go back into a moment in time, I would love I don't know, because I'll probably get picked on, but I'd like to go and travel around in the 80s and the early 90s with the wrestlers. I mean, what's some of the stories that really stand out for you guys on the road?
Well, most of them were just observing other guys. We were pretty boring. We both had the idea that we're on the road for a reason. We're on the road because it's a job. We're going to go train. We're going to eat well. The motto was eat good, sleep good, good hotels, travel good automobiles, Cadillacs or that nature, and train and do our job, save our money. We didn't go out and nightclub and go drinking and stuff. So most of those stories probably developed in the clubs after the matches, but we'd go back to the hotel because, we were always usually on last 95% of the time. So that meant we were getting out of the building after showers, probably about 11:30. Then you try to get something light to eat because you're on a 6 o'clock flight, and that's 6 o'clock all the way to midnight, 6 o'clock to midnight. So a lot of the guys would go to the bars and go to the plane. We didn't. We tried to get some rest.
I don't know if you can remember this one, Bill, though, but this is a pretty good story. Kurt Hennig was a pretty good ribber. And we were at TV, and we were on the way to the town, and Bill, Fuji, and we always traveled together. And then Kurt would travel with the boss man and, whoever else he was with. And they stopped at this hardware store, and we were driving by, and then I asked Kurt, I said, Kurt, what in the world are you doing there? Well, he ended up getting about 100 baby mice. And they take these mice and they feed them to snakes. That's what they use them for. So we had a whole big bag of them, and we get to TV, and he took and he put a bunch of them in Sid Vicious's pocket.
Oh, Jesus.
And then he put a bunch of it in the Ultimate Warrior's pocket. So, Sid was a really good guy, and after the matches, he, puts his hands in his pocket and he, what the fuck is this shit, And he knew enough not to put it over, it was because it was a rib. He was just getting new in the territory. But then the Warrior has his match, and Kurt had and these are live mice, little tiny ones. And so the Warrior had them all in his pockets filled with them, and he goes in to get his keys or whatever, and he went nuts, just screaming. And that's what they wanted to do. So right away he goes and tells Vince. So all the guys are looking, and the door's closed, and I don't know what he's saying in there. And Vince is probably laughing his ass off, but trying to be serious. So then the Warrior comes out, and the first thing Vince does is he yells out, Hennig, where are you? So Hennig goes in his office, and they're in there talking. And I talked to Kurt after. They were laughing about it and everything, So then Vince starts, screaming at Kurt, kind of making it up and everything. And Kurt gets out of the office, but then Kurt takes a whole bunch of mice, puts them outside Vince's door. So now Vince comes back out, and he's going to yell at Kurt, and he walks on the mice, and he's got them all over his feet and everything, and then you can hear him yelling, Hennig! And Hennig took off running out the door. That's the stuff that would go on like that.
Oh, I love it. Brilliant.
That is awesome. Speaking of the road, because we mentioned that you guys were obviously sometimes you drive hours between shows, and sometimes even do double shot tapings. Right? There was double back.
Yep.
I remember those. Is there ever a time when you got your itinerary and you're like your favorite places your favorite arenas you wrestled in, and maybe some of the ones that you didn't enjoy going to?
Well, you would sit at TV and you would get somebody from the office would hand you a stack. I mean, literally, you're out on the road, say, 35 days, and you got 25 airline tickets, and you're going here and there and every place. And that was one of the things that some of the guys objected to. And Billy Jack, I don't know if you remember him.
Yeah.
He was sitting there, and he was in Oregon. A lot of these guys came from small territories where you were driving 4 or 5 hours, and that was it. And they gave him his stack, and he was sitting across from us. He said, "My God, what's that?" I said, that's your airline tickets for next month." And he couldn't handle it. He only stayed a brief time there because he said, I can't do this. But we used to like to travel by vehicle because we had more control of it. If you wanted to sleep in an extra half hour, we'd speed up the trip a little bit. But when you got a 6 o'clock flight, that means you got to, thank goodness there wasn't the TSA situation there is now. If you had a 6 o'clock flight, you had to be there at 4. So you'd never get any sleep. But then you could get, there at 5 o'clock or so and get through. But yeah, it was trying. And Barry and I now, so when we do signings and stuff, it's funny to say, but if we're within 8 hours, we'd prefer to drive because we don't have to. It's 3 hours to go to the airport, 2 hours to TSA, a 2.5 hour flight, then get picked up. We could have been driven there.
Mm. Definitely. Barry, what did the tag team title run mean to you guys? Obviously, until the New Day, you were the longest reigning WWF tag team champions. What was that feeling like when you find out that you're going to be WWF tag team champions? Because, like you say, you're following on for some great names. You get the win at WrestleMania, and then you go on an incredible run, only to be broken not so many years ago by the New Day. What is that? As a fan, I've always like when I get to do things like this, I'm always interested when they come to you and the company comes to you and say, "Hey, look, you're going to be the guys. We're going to strap this rocket on your back, and you're going to carry this company." Is that something that you guys thrive on? Hopefully you're just thinking, well, show me the money. But it's one of them things where it must be a privilege and a true honor to carry that mantle.
Oh, it was unbelievable. My whole goal in wrestling was to get to wrestle for the WWF. And then I finally got up there and I had a great partner and we had a great team. And when they said that it was time for us to get the belts, I mean, it was a huge honor. That was the pinnacle of my career, was getting the tag belts there. And I mean, I've had tag team belts and TV championship belts and everything before, but that meant more than anything. And us having it for, what was it, 478 days or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Bill or we even realized it was that long, because it's just, you're on the road every day wrestling, you're having a great time, having great matches with everybody, and it wasn't that big of a deal. And until 10 years later or whatever, however long, and they said, "Oh yeah, New Day is going to beat your record." That's when I was like, "Holy cow, we had the belts that long." You didn't even realize it at the time. Isn't that how you felt, Bill?
Yeah. And, when you have them, you really don't realize that how influential it was and what it meant till after you look back later on, years later. We were just doing our job. And it's funny in the wrestling business, like any other business, if you're putting butts in the seats and they're paying for that seat, you're drawing money. So I think that they thought, well, these guys are doing a good job. We might as well keep it on them. But we never qualmed about, well, if we lose it, we lose it, or if we lose it, we're going to be upset. But there again, Barry and I both looked at, this is a job we're doing. And with the belts, you're going to make a little more money. So just as long as we took advantage of that situation.
Yeah. See, and I think the office really trusted us, because we didn't hold them up and say, "Hey, we're not going to drop the titles to the Brainbusters tonight," or anything. They knew that we were going to do business, and I think that was another reason why they kept them on us for a long time too. Is because, I mean, we loved to work with anybody, and we were business all the way, and they knew that.
Do you think that's missing from modern day wrestling, guys? Obviously, you hear people like Bret Hart interviewed, and he was the same as you guys. He would always do business. You know what I mean? I mean, Bret could probably have a match with a paper bag and make it look good. But some, I'm not saying everyone now, but back then it was like there were more wrestlers willing to do business, whereas nowadays certain wrestlers, because of where it's gone and the money, and they might have these movie deals coming up, they're like, well, I'm not taking this bump, I'm not doing that. Do you think that it is a big difference between now and then and now and back in the day?
Oh, not really. I mean, you had guys back then who were holding people up.
Really?
They were saying, "No, I'm not going to do that. It's going to make me look bad." I don't think that's changed. I think there's maybe, the guys today, they've got guaranteed contracts, so they're not going to worry about if they're not on TV for 5 weeks in a row or whatever. But back when we were there, I mean, if you're not at least on TV doing an interview, or you can't be on every week. That's one of the mistakes that I think they're making now.
Okay.
They got a little crew of guys that are on every week. They've got a ton of talented guys on both companies. You wonder, are they still there? Those guys still there? Oh yeah, they're there. They just haven't done anything with them. But there was guys back in, right, Barry, that said, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to look bad. And, well, yeah, I'll do it, but you got to give me more money. And so that part hasn't changed.
Yeah, definitely not. I want to talk just briefly as we start to wrap up now. WrestleMania, Andy mentioned that you obviously won titles at WrestleMania stuff. The WrestleMania now is just crazy. It's 2 nights. I don't know how long until it goes 3 nights. Who knows? And they're doing a lot of things 2 nights now. But did you get the feeling then working at WrestleMania was just the absolute? Was it the thing that you worked all year for? I know you guys it was a job and you wanted to do it to the best of your ability, but ultimately it felt like a lot of people's thing was, I want to get on that show. I want to be a part of WrestleMania. Was that the same for you guys? Was it like important for you to be on the biggest show of the year for the WWF?
Well, of course, that's like the Super Bowl now. Everybody wants to be at the Super Bowl. I don't think personally, I didn't realize it was going to be as big as it is now. It was a gamble for Vince. I mean, he put a lot of effort and a lot of money into it. And when you hear the stories, if it wasn't successful, the company was going to tank. And fortunately for the company and him, it lasted. So yeah, that was a big match. But both of us have been on bigger events around the world. But WrestleMania for here in the States that's the ultimate.
Yeah, and it wasn't easy to be at WrestleMania either. You get there, early in the morning, and you're going through interviews, and you got the press, you got all that. You're working all day, and you finally get to the ring, and that's what you do best is get in the ring. Then you got 10 minutes, and then the referee's saying, "Hey, you got to go home now. You're going over the time." So then you finish the match in 10 minutes, and it's like, well, I want to be here because it's the biggest show. I want 30 minutes, but they won't let you have that. So it's almost, it was funner to be at other matches than there, but it was important to be there, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. So, Andy, it's fitting that you have the last question of the show for the team as you're returning to us today. So,
I appreciate it, my friend. I appreciate it. Guys, just last one from me, really. Honestly, just before we let you get out of it, it's been a truly humbling experience for me just to sit down. And I know for Adam, and I speak for a lot of wrestling fans, but there's not very often that you get to sit down with your childhood heroes. You probably hear it all the time, but just us sitting here doing a podcast, it's been truly humbling. So I honestly do thank you guys so much for your time. You've made if I could go back and talk to 11-year-old Andy, I'm sure he'd be jumping off his bed thinking that he's talking to one of his favorite tag teams. When with saying that, does it still humble you guys now when you're still traveling the world, you're doing autograph signing? Does it still humble you now that the Demolition, the Axe and Smash are still relevant, so relevant now, and quite rightly, as they should be, when you go around all these conventions? Did you ever think that once your in-ring career had finished, that you're still as loved as you always were when you were when you were lacing the boots up?
Well, it's nice. I mean, we would have never known. It's nice to do events like this and conventions and signings and stuff. And it is humbling. And it's nice to be able to interact with fans because when we were actively wrestling, we weren't allowed to. We had a persona and a character that we had to stick to. And it's really nice now to come talk to fans and do these events and have people. They actually remember more about our career than we do because we were involved in it, and we were so hyped up at the time that you guys and the fans, it's nice to be remembered. Yes, it is.
You boys will always be remembered.
Yeah, I talk to my son and my grandkids, and I tell them all the time. I say I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I've been all over the world. I got so many friends. I've had great tag team partners in wrestling, and wrestling's been our whole life. I mean, we wrestled for, 20 years or whatever, and then now we're doing all this. So it's still like we're in the business still. And, we are so grateful that, you guys want to even do a podcast with us. I mean, that's huge. So, thank all the fans and thank you guys. And, I'm hoping we can go to England pretty soon. Get us over there.
I would love that.
That would, yeah, 100%. I've still got my Hasbro's figures are sitting upstairs in their box waiting for you guys to sign. So yeah, you need to come back to England so I can get them signed.
Yeah, I was saying to Barry before we went on air, Bill, that I met you both at WrestleCon in London about 10 years ago. It was you, it was Typhoon as well. Fred Ottoman was there. Brett and Sean were there, and it was you guys were the
Yes,
first
yeah.
two people that we met, and it was just the first two people that myself and my friend met, and it was again doing this. I mean, you say it's humbling for you it's humbling for us to sit here and talk to guys that we've grown up watching, we've grown up love watching, and we want to thank you both for your time. But we are out of time on the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast with the greatest tag team in our generation for certain, Demolition.
Well, let me say, I mean, I got on late, so if you want to extend my time to where I know Barry was earlier than me, and I had a difficulty, so I'll stay on for a little longer if you want.
Okay, so if you've got a bit more time, that's great, but we'll have it. Barry, if you haven't got time, then you're more than welcome to leave, or you can.
Yeah, I gotta head out of here though. I'm in the middle of a whole bunch of stuff, but I just appreciate everything, and I'll talk to you later, Bill.
Okay, looks warm up there, Barry, with the hat and everything.
Yeah, I'm freezing my ass off. I'm in a cabin right now. It's like 20 degrees in here. You know?
All right, I'll see you.
Yeah,
See you soon,
here's
Barry.
where I'm at. I'm in this little cabin. I'm up in the middle of the woods, up in the middle of nowhere, and all the puddles last night had ice on them and everything. That's how cold it was.
Oh my God.
So, but anyways, thank everybody. Thank all the fans, and I love all you guys. Take
Thanks,
it easy,
Barry.
alright?
Thank you, man.
Thanks.
Appreciate
All
your
right, Barry.
time.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Barry. Pleasure to meet you.
Barry is leaving us to do some jobs. But Bill, yeah, thanks for agreeing to stay on a bit longer. It's
No
going back
problem.
to the 80s and 90s, obviously dominated by a Hulk Hogan and people like the Undertaker that was just coming on. And when you look at someone like the Undertaker, prime example, someone that continued to reinvent himself. He took that time when he was not the Undertaker and he was the Undertaker again. Was you surprised when he first come in like 1990 WWF as the Undertaker with the grey? When he back then, did you ever think like he would be just as like one of the biggest stars in wrestling?
No, to be honest with you, no, he had come in after we did. I think he was in there maybe just a few months after we had left.
Yeah.
But he's a talented guy, and like you said, he was able to reinvent himself, and he adhered to the old style too. So I think that even through all the changes, the character variations, he still had the basic psychology, which is important.
Yeah.
Well, recently, obviously, with the whole of the Netflix deal coming up for the WWE now, did you ever foresee a time in wrestling where it'd be as big as it is? Obviously, Netflix had just released the Vince McMahon documentary. We won't go too much into that, but the way wrestling is now and the access that fans have, me and Adam have talked about this many a time. We used to have to wait till like a Friday in the UK to even get an hour of Raw. And we're sitting here doing this, like great things like this. Did you ever foresee a time where wrestling would be as big as it is now? Because I think sitting here in 2024, I don't think wrestling's ever been bigger.
No, I agree. I don't know where they go from here. One of the things that a lot of the fans that we talk to when we do the signings and appearances is that there's wrestling on every day, and I think that I don't know at what point does it oversaturate. It's like NFL football, and I'm sure with you guys over there, with your football, I don't know how often it's on television. So you got to be careful. You're showing this for free, and then you're asking people to pay $100, $200, $300 to go live when they could actually wait with this new. I don't know if Netflix still has it, but the network, you get the pay-per-view free too. So it's that delicate balance that they have to take care of here.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah.
So, well, football. I mean, Andy does a football podcast, don't you? For
I do. I cover the Washington, well, Redskins. I keep calling them Washington Commanders. I host a show for the I host a show for the Commanders over here. So there's I think we're so saturated now as well. You can just pick up your phone and watch live sport. I mean, if I could, my grandparents have passed away, God rest their soul. But if I could sit and chat to my grandfather now, if I said to him back then, Granddad, you can pick up your phone and watch a football game, he would be like, "Are you crazy?" It was just I could hit a button on my computer and do things like this. Where he was like, you had to send a letter back in the day. I know the world has changed so much. With that last question for me, Bill, if someone come to you now and said, "I want to get involved into the wrestling business," what advice would you give them?
Well, the same advice I gave them years ago. I would first say, what kind of a job do you have now? Why are you thinking about making the change? And I advise guys, if they have a good job, keep the job, get trained in wrestling, and wrestle on the weekends and use it as a hobby, like you're golfing. If you're interested in doing it, you can do it and still hold your job. Because once you quit that job, you're totally dependent on professional wrestling to pay all of your bills. If you've got a job that pays your bills and has your lifestyle that you want, and you want a side income and do wrestling, you could drive a brand new Cadillac on the wrestling money, even at $200 or $300 a week if you're working every week. But once you take the position to quit that job and listen to say, I've got to get booked now 7 days a week, it's a big difference.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's how I always tell everybody.
Yeah, definitely. So, Bill, last, there's a two-part question from me to finish off. But number one is a bit more of a funny one. It's how long did it take you to paint your guys' faces as Demolition? And two, what was it about Madison Square Garden that everybody loved? I mean, it's not the biggest arena. Obviously, they do massive shows like at Wembley and over here now. But what was it so special about MSG and the WWE?
Well, I think it's the aura. I think it's just the name. You're in Madison Square Garden in New York City, the Big Apple. And you're right. I had been in many, many, many coliseums that held more people, had bigger crowds. But, you're in New York City. It's Madison Square Garden. But that's probably the whole subject of it. I had been in Tokyo at the Egg Dome. I had been in a number of places around the world, outdoor arenas where you're drawing 150,000. The Egg Dome does probably 160,000. So, but when you're in New York, the Garden's the place. And what was the other part of the question?
How long did it take you to do your makeup? Put your makeup.
Usually about a half hour or so. And we'd do maybe an extra 15, 20 minutes. Depends on how intricate and how precise we wanted to do it. But it gave us time. A lot of the guys are sitting in the locker room and they're twiddling their thumbs for a half hour. We're getting ready to paint up. So it killed the moment.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for coming on our show and just talking to us about wrestling for the 40 odd minutes. It means the world to myself and Andy to talk to people from our childhood that we enjoyed watching growing up, and now we get to have this conversation with you about wrestling. Just a big thank you so much for coming on the show, and we look forward
it's my pleasure.
We look forward to hopefully seeing you over in the UK so Andy can get his Hasbro figures signed.
Yes, please come back. I need them Hasbro figures signed.
I'll do that graciously, and I apologize for getting on late, guys.
No problem at all. Thank you so much for joining us, man. Been truly humbling.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Awesome show.
Yeah, awesome show, Andy. We'll leave it there, Andy. Thank you again so much for coming on.
You're more than welcome, mate. Anytime you need me, just give me a shout, dude. Yeah, just holler.
Holler if you hear me, or holler.
Yeah, mate. It's just put up the bat signal. I'll be here.
Put up the bat signal. But guys, coming up on the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast very soon, Eric Bischoff returns to the show for another installment with the man that is Eric Bischoff. Looking forward to that. Big thanks to Vince Russo last week for coming on board
Great
again.
interview. That, by the way, mate, that was a great interview.
It was a great interview, and Ask Vince Anything, and he did. Amazingly enough, well, not amazingly enough, it did. It was an amazing show. But Layla's coming on as well in a couple of weeks, plus maybe one or two more. I can't announce yet. But Andy, it's been an absolute pleasure as always talking to you, my man. Keep smashing it on the command on the Washington, and they're winning for a change. Apart from
Jesus, dude, yeah, I know we're actually a good football team this season, my man. It's my dream of maybe watching us in the playoffs could come true this season. But yeah, keep killing it, mate. I'm so proud of what you're doing, my friend. I texted you the other day, commented on the I know you're smashing the subscribes on YouTube. Just proud of you as a person, proud of you where you've come as a podcast host, mate. Honestly, keep killing it, my man. So proud of you.
Thank you very much, guys. This has been the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast. He has been Andy Burrows. I have been Adam Cousins. That was the Demolition. Until next time, everybody, buckle down, stay safe, and goodbye.